our revisiting of Final Fantasy X. So when we last left our heroes, they were heading to Kilika Island so Yuna can get her next day on. While en route, Titus gets a minute alone with Yuna to talk about some really important things.
The wind. It's nice.
Finally, we get to more important matters like the fact that Yuna is kind of a celebrity in Spira since her father, Lord Braska, defeated Sin 10 years ago, and apparently one of his guardians was a man named Jet, which also happens to be the name of Titus's father. Titus seems to take an issue that it could be his father since it's already been slightly hinted at that Titus is carrying a boatload of daddy issues. But before we can deal with that, guess who shows up again?
Run! It's Godzilla!
Nah, it's just Sin again. Anyway, the genius crew we have on deck decides to stick Sin with a harpoon because, yeah, I'm sure that's gonna go well. Well, Sin, as it figures, doesn't like a harpoon up his ass, so he sends out some birdie-looking things for us to deal with. Somehow, in the aftermath of all this, Titus falls overboard and Walker rushes to his rescue. I don't really know why. It's not like Titus is gonna drown or anything. And that's not just because he's the main character and clearly the game couldn't continue without him, but that's thanks to that whole breathing indefinitely thing he's got going on. After that, Sin launches ahead at Mach 5 and attacks Kilika, leaving it in ruins. Our boat finally arrives, and the villagers want Yuna to send the dead. It's at this point that we learn a very interesting fact about the world of Spira, one that I'm going to be bringing up a little bit later into the game. It turns out that all of the monsters that we've been fighting up to this point were once people.
What's ascending? Are we going somewhere?
You truly are clueless. The dead need guidance, filled with grief over their own death. They refuse to face their fate. They yearn to live on and resent those still alive. You see, they envy the living. And in time, that envy turns to anger, even hate. Should these souls remain in Spira, they become fiends that prey on the living. Sad, isn't it?
And I'm not gonna lie, this is a very beautiful scene. Big props to Nobuo Uematsu for yet another amazing track for the Final Fantasy series. But like I said, this whole concept is really gonna take it up the ass later on, so just keep that in the back of your mind. The next day, we get to head on our way to Kilika Temple, but before that, it turns out that Yuna would like to make Titus one of her guardians, instead of just having him be a random guy following them around.
You know what? There's no time for jokes, yeah? He may be a blitzball whiz kid, but up against fiends, he's a newbie.
Yes, Yuna, let's listen to the man who takes enemies down with the equivalent of a soccer ball. The group decides to put this issue on hold for the time being and makes their way through the forest. Side note here, Luzu and Gata from the Crusaders Lodge are back, and they're telling me to find another way through the forest since there's a giant onion monster blocking the path. Do these guys not realize that I have a summoner, a dude with a blitzball, and the star player of the Xanark and Abes? I'm ready to kick some ass, if you ask me. Also, if Luzu and Gata can't beat this thing, how do they handle Sin again?
The fiend before us is Ochu, Lord of the Wood. We've had trouble with this one before. Remember, discretion is the better part of valor.
Arriving at the temple, we meet some of the Aurochs' competition, the Luca Goers, who might be the most effeminate sports players I've ever seen in my life.
So what's your goal this time? You gonna do your best again? Ha! It's too bad your best isn't good enough. Why even bother showing up? This time, we play to win. Ooh, play away. Just remember, even kids can play, boys.
What's worse is that the main guy here is voiced by Quentin Flynn, who also voices another character that we're going to meet later on in this game, but he's also the voice of Raiden from Metal Gear Solid 2 and Axel from Kingdom Hearts 2, and this performance is totally ruining both of those characters for me, so please stop talking. We also meet, holy hell, second part of the video series and second weird-ass outfit. This is Donna, no not that Donna, this Donna, who despite wearing an outfit that might be seen on the cover of a Victoria's Secret magazine, is somehow a summoner. Donna's a bitch, and I mean that in more ways than one, since after she insults Yuna, she has her manservant here, Bartello, truck my ass into the cloister of balls. So now I'm stuck ball swapping again. Though I guess Waka, Yuna, Kimari, and Lulu have some serious ball swapping skills, since I don't run into them until the end. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Anyway, once Titus arrives on the scene, Lulu and Waka start flipping out, since apparently Titus went into the cloister a second time, and now Yuna might be excommunicated.
It was Donna and that big musclehead man.
Yuna will be the one to suffer the consequences.
What consequences?
She could be excommunicated.
was always confused by this since no one seems to be monitoring the temples. No one mentioned excommunication the first time that Tidus went in here, and after Yuna leaves the room, she still gets the summon Ifrit, and then I'm back outside and we all move on. So what really happened here? And I'll go into more detail a little bit later about how these temples work in the next part, because when you start to pick apart the structure, it falls apart incredibly fast. So now it's back to the boat and off to Luca. On the way, the game makes you take part in a little mini-game of having Tidus learn the jet shot. Basically, if you complete the minigame, you can have Tidus access the shot during the tournament. And apparently from the things I've read on the internet, you need this move to have any chance in hell of raising your stats of winning this first match of the tournament. Yet I constantly get it every time I play, and I constantly get my ass handed to me. We arrive at Luca, and I always loved it when the announcer says this.
This event is sponsored by Yevon.
Wouldn't that kind of be like if the announcers on ESPN said the Super Bowl was sponsored by God? Back on the dock, Tidus makes an ass of himself, again, by trash-talking the goers, and then we get to meet two other important characters, Maester Micah, who is essentially the equivalent to the Pope, and our game's villain. This is Seymour Guado, a man who would definitely top my list of people who clearly look like villains based on appearance only. Topping that list would be Master Xehanort from Birth by Sleep. Like, seriously, how can you not tell that this is evil incarnate when you look at it? He's got veins popping out of his head and purple eyes. What more proof do you need? A sign around his neck? So now it's finally time to talk blitzball. First, let me try to explain how I felt about blitzball the first time I ever played Final Fantasy X. After seeing that opening scene, my young mind was convinced that blitzball would be awesome. I mean, look at the opening cutscene again. There was a whole lot of fast-paced action, a guy got thrown out of the sphere, there's some grappling and tackling, and it looks kind of fast-paced. Regardless, we arrived at Luca, and the game started these tutorial missions, and my young soul shattered into pieces. What should have been an action-packed minigame is instead a strategy-based game that moves slower than a snail in shit. It's all stat-based, and despite the fact that there was one time when I really tried to break it all down and learn the rules, and try to understand how everything worked, I still feel like the whole thing is luck-based. Also, most times you don't really feel like you're in control of anything happening on screen. Whenever the AI has the ball, it's like you might as well put the controller down and go get a snack, since there's nothing you can really do at this point. Seriously, at one point the goers had the ball and scored within minutes, and there was literally nothing I could do to stop it. Thankfully, Yuna barges in and says Auron might be in town and takes Tidus away. Our search for Auron leads us to a bar of all places, where Kimahri gets into a brawl with two other Wookiees that he knows from his past. And somehow, despite me being in a confined area with only one room, Yuna manages to disappear from my sight. Tidus takes only one step outside to find Lulu, who already knows that Yuna's been kidnapped by the Albed Sykes, the team that the Aurochs are playing in the first match of the tournament. How the Sykes managed to not only kidnap Yuna, but deliver the ransom demands to Wakka and Lulu, all while I was walking around for 5 minutes, is a bit of a mystery, one that I'm probably not going to think too much on. The only thing that makes any kind of sense here is if the ransom demand went out before Yuna was even kidnapped, which means you gotta give the Albed some credit there for jumping the gun. But then the Albed are pretty stupid since they brought Yuna back to their ship, which is currently sitting back in their dock. So never mind. Still, at least all this is keeping me away from the tournament. So a big surprise, we rescue Yuna, and while that was happening, Wakka managed to win the first match. So yay! Now it's my turn! Jesus Christ, we are so screwed. I mean, one time I think I did this and the score was 6-0, so this was one of my better attempts. Finally, the blitzball hell is behind us as the stadium is attacked by fiends. Thankfully, Auron is here to kick some ass alongside us. Seymour also helps out by summoning Anima, a mummy-like Aeon dragged her from the depths of hell, that I'm sure is going to totally back up the fact that Seymour is a nice guy that we can all trust. After all, the old saying goes, don't judge a summoner by how creepy looking their Aeon happens to be. After the dust settles, Titus finally gets to have a chat with Auron, or rather he gets to whine to him and blame him for everything that's happened up until this point.
All of this is your fault! Getting swallowed by sin, ending up here in Spira, not being able to go back to Xanark, and everything! I'm telling you, it's all your fault!
And Auron's reaction to all of this is priceless. Then Auron explains that he was also Yuna's father's guardian along with Titus's father Jet 10 years ago. Auron then drops this bombshell.
Sin is checked.
No. It's not true. That's impossible!
Although I have to admit, the best thing about this whole scene is how Auron reacts to everything Titus says. He kind of just keeps his cool, and this is why Auron is my favorite character in this whole game. He says things as they are, he doesn't really complain, and he doesn't ask a million stupid questions, so he's cool in my book. Auron goes to offer his services to Yuna, along with Titus, and now we get to the infamous scene, the one that everyone's quick to jump to when talking about why they hate Final Fantasy X's voice acting. The laughing scene.
You probably shouldn't laugh anymore.
The idea behind the scene has a good intention, but the voice acting just doesn't help it in the slightest. It's completely overdone, and maybe that was the point? Either way, I think we should take a look and see how this all sounded out in Japanese, don't you? And while I cringe at the laughing in this scene every time I play it, I really do love the reaction from Owaka and Lulu. That's just hysterical.
What are you looking at?
We were just worried you guys might have gone crazy.
Also, side note here about the voice acting in general, it's kind of all over the place. Some characters in the main cast like Auron, Waka, and Lulu are fine, and they say many of their lines perfectly, with pretty good delivery. Yet, characters like Yuna, Seymour, and some of the other non-playable characters have this weird delivery that can sometimes diminish the impact of some of the more dramatic scenes, sometimes making it a bit laughable. So, we gained a new Guardian and the pilgrimage continues. What awaits our heroes on the road to Doge Temple? Will they encounter Sin again? Am I just asking questions to pad out the length of this video? Maybe, but we'll find out next time when revisiting Final Fantasy X continues. Thanks for watching.